This an all-out blitz, real hard hits, them other podcast trash, we gon' make them all quit. We cover all the topics with intelligence and logic. I know you wanna score, but ID gon' stop it. We from Texas, so that mean that we Texans. Breaking down the X's and O's, our profession. No complaining, just training, you see the progression. They had a Pro Bowl for talk shows, we get selected. We gon' celebrate every win like a birthday. Ray J with the news, first with all the updates. Spin move on the competition, yeah, we juking them. You not really in touch if you not tuning in. This is Crenshaw, Briggs, and VT. We want the touchdown, we not trying to go for 3. And it's best if you get up out the street, cause them bulls out the pen and they bout to stampede.
What's going on, guys? Sorry about the delay. Computer froze a little bit, but nonetheless, we're here. We are the Texans Fan Battle Podcast. Today, I'm your host, VT. Matt's a little sick, so he's not here today. But let me introduce you to Crenshaw. Crenshaw, say hi to everyone.
What's up, everybody?
And we got Brendan Scott from SportsRadio 610. Brendan, why don't you say hi to everyone?
What's good, everybody? Glad to be on with y'all.
Awesome. So we're going to get right in it. We're going to start with some NFL news. So as you saw from the bumper there, AR is on IR. He's going to be out for anywhere between 4 and 8 weeks. He has a shoulder injury. He doesn't know whether or not he's going to have surgery. It obviously is going to impact the Colts and obviously the Texans' chances if we're thinking about having the playoffs. Some say that Minshew is a better quarterback, so it's not really going to affect them in terms of wins and losses, perhaps only their development. B. Scott, what do you got? What do you think about AR?
Yeah, I've actually been impressed by him. I know that it hasn't been exactly clean, and you could expect that. But the thing about as it pertains to the story here is that the injury history and just the injury concern is very, very real. Like, it's something that cannot be dismissed or minimized the way I kind of think I did in the draft process. Thought, maybe he's just had some bad luck. Now you look at him out there and he's left the field no less than 3 times. He's going on the IR for an extended period of time. You've already seen Trevor Lawrence come out and just say, hey, I talked to the guy and just said, hey, man, try to protect yourself and not take as many hits. And his style of play and all of that, man, just kind of lends itself to this. And he's shown himself to be, at this point, to be injury prone. But I do think he's exciting. I liked him coming out of the draft. I thought he was a little bit less of a project than people made him out to be. And I think he's gone out there and shown himself to at least be competent, if not still somebody that has a lot of work to do and a lot of room to grow. But like, I don't watch Anthony Richardson and just think, man, that's hopeless. There, you can't do nothing with that. Like, that's just not how I feel when I watch the guy. I'm like, yeah, man, that's just a guy that needs some coaching and some experience and needs to stay healthy, stay on the field. And that right now seems to be the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think both you and I were talking Anthony Richardson praises back in pre-draft. And obviously, I love C.J. Stroud, and I'm glad we got him. But AR was my QB1 in the draft. And so I understand the injury concerns he has. Landry actually brought it up quite a few times, and I know that you talked about it with him on air. He's talked to me about it as well, and told me, and always used to bring up the fact that he hurt himself dancing as part of his injury concerns. And it looks like, unfortunately, Landry could be a little bit right because of his play style that he's going to hurt himself. Now, I always thought that, he could hurt himself, but he's going to play through it because of his size, right? I mean, he's basically a linebacker at quarterback. So, so we're seeing that his play style has to change because he's been hurt quite a bit, and he could be out 8 weeks, if he needs surgery. So I think that's going to be quite impactful for the Colts. Crenshaw, what do you think?
It's very sad because he's a young career. He hasn't finished a full game yet. I mean, I don't know. Is it really the play style or he just fragile? Because we've seen quarterbacks do the same thing he's doing and they play through it, but not like this. I mean, he's getting hurt like game after game. So maybe he's just fragile.
Well, one of them is the concussion, right? The one against the Texans, and that's just that I think is just bad luck. I wouldn't call it fragile or anything like that. Like in that case, when a dude gets concussions, and then there's nuance to the concussion conversation. They're not all created equal, not all the same. I actually saw him at the end of that game. When that game was over, I went in the coach locker room. He was coming out, and I thought he looked fine. But what do I know? I'm not examining him, and I don't really know much about concussions. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not diagnosing him. But I'm watching him, walk out of the locker room with his bag, rolling his bag, and looking just fine. Walking with some of the Colts personnel and everything. So I'm thinking, oh, everything's fine. But no, he hit his head and had to miss time, and so like some of his stuff is a little bit nuanced, but also like there's more than just that, right? Like it just kind of keeps manifesting itself. I think it's a little bit of both. Like I'm not gonna say necessarily fragile, but there may be something to being injury prone, but it's definitely like the play style is part of it. You don't see him slide, you see him inviting contact and all that kind of stuff. Like it can't be that just because you big. I don't think just because you're a big guy mean you should be inviting contact. Cam Newton I thought was the best at it in terms of being a big quarterback who invited contact and was just a problem. Like just individually as himself, Ben Roethlisberger more so in the pocket, but Cam Newton outside of the pocket. But you see how it worked out for Cam. Like he had an amazing career for a stretch there, but I feel like that stuff started to catch up to him eventually. And I think if you're Anthony Richardson, you want to be mindful of all of that.
Yeah, he should be, but so far at least the organization know what they have going forward, and I think by him sitting on the sideline and learning more, watching what his mistakes was at, it's going to help him out in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. Let's get to the last bit of NFL news before we get to the Texans news, and something that is surprising some people, but frankly not me, because this is actually one of my predictions, which is that the Athletic reports that Robert Kraft is not opposed to firing Bill Belichick. I actually said this in the offseason that the Patriots would be in last place, and Bill Belichick, I think, has lost it a little bit. And I just want to get your takes on, has Bill Belichick lost it? Will he be fired? Because it's not looking good at all for the Patriots right now.
Yeah, I think what's happening is that Bill Belichick, the general manager, is cannibalizing Bill Belichick, the head coach. I feel like we would be silly at this point to be questioning Bill Belichick as a head coach, even though it is true that his record is not that good without Tom Brady. Like that's hard to deny, but he's accomplished enough, and we've seen enough from him to give him the benefit of the doubt as a coach. But he's also, like, we got to just remember, running pretty much everything up there personnel wise. Like all of the help that he gets, whoever is the new Nick Casario's up there is still going through everything is going through Bill Belichick. So like the team, the Patriots are Bill Belichick is the point that I'm making. Like even with Tom Brady there, outside of the fact that they struck gold there and found Tom Brady in the 6th round when they found him, other than that, for that whole era, the Patriots were Bill Belichick. So they were Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and so now they're just Bill Belichick because Tom is gone, and him being a great coach is just not enough. And him being a not necessarily the greatest personnel guy has probably gone under the radar because he had Tom Brady, and they were able to put together some good defenses, and they did make some pretty good moves at times, but at the same time, like, what do you do when you're Bill Belichick and you don't have a quarterback and you don't really have much around him either? And even the defense doesn't necessarily look the way it used to. It's like, man, they're just a shell of themselves all together. So, I mean, it's an interesting time because it's a lot of questions. It's a lot of questions like, man, this guy is a legendary coach, but here he is putting together a team and don't have a quarterback, and you see where they get you.
I mean, before I get your take, Crunch, I just want to let you know all of the stats really that are coming out here to show that Bill Belichick and Mac Jones really don't have what it takes to win games this year. The Saints game, the 34-0 game, was the largest blowout of Belichick's entire career. In the last couple of games, they went Cowboys 38-3, loss. Jets 15-10, that was win. But again, they didn't put a ton of points up. Dolphins 24-17 loss. Eagles 25-20 loss. Mac Jones has thrown for just barely over 1,000 yards, 5 TDs, 6 interceptions, a 74.2 passer rating. In the last 2 games, he hasn't even thrown a touchdown, and he's thrown 2 interceptions in each game. Crenshaw, what's your take?
Well, maybe Bill just tired. All good runs come to an end, and I think his run came to an end when they lost to the Tennessee Titans in the playoffs a couple years back. I think that was it right there. And he just tired. He just like, okay, man, I'm tired of doing this. I'm tired of doing that. It's time for me to move on. Mac Jones isn't a good quarterback. He fooled everybody his rookie year, made the Pro Bowl. He fooled everybody. They thought like, oh, okay, they found a gem right there. But it's just time for them to move on from him. And I don't see them firing Bill. I see him maybe just stepping down and letting somebody that's want to coach them and coach them. But
I agree.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine Bill Belichick getting fired, especially like when you consider not just the success, but the fact that it has been like we're just talking about year 4 of the rebuild. Like you would think Bill Belichick would get a little bit more respect than being fired that soon into the process, So if anything, it would have to come down to Bill like not wanting to do it no more, and then they kind of have a mutual part in the ways. But the question is, what if Bill don't want to go? What if they're ready to go in a different direction and try to do things differently, and Bill don't want to go? I don't know what the answer is on who wants to do what, but that's what I'm peeping. That's what I'm trying to see.
Well, I mean, as president of the Haterade Ball, I'm loving to see it because, as most of you know, like I grew up in Connecticut, but I was never a Patriots fan. And even though there's a lot of Patriots fans in Connecticut, there has always been the stigma that they screwed us because they were actually supposed to build the stadium there. They made Connecticut spend over $100 million in testing and all this stuff, and then said nope. And so. Again, as opposed to hater at ball, I think I'm loving seeing the Patriots fall from grace. I mean, I just want another team to be the dynasty, and why can't it be the Texans? Before we get to Texans news, I just want to tell everyone that we've partnered with Lockerverse. You can download it on the iOS app. If you're on it, you can ask questions. You can communicate there. There's also going to be giveaways, hats and so forth, signed by CJ Stroud. So go ahead and download the Lockerverse app on iOS. There'll be a lot more coming from us through that app very soon. But without further ado, I think we need to get to some recap.
This is Crenshaw, Briggs, and VT. We want the touchdown. We not trying to go for 3. And it's best if you get up out the street, because them bulls out the pen and they about to stampede.
So we lost. Crenshaw, you and I both predicted a win. We obviously lost by a field goal. It is a loss that I don't think that we should have. There are pretty some good things though that happened. As much as we're going to talk about a few things that are aggravating me. And obviously I want to talk about the article that you wrote, B. Scott, because I completely agree with you. But let's get to the good stuff first. CJ Stroud led the game-winning drive. He had a 57% completion rate, not his highest, but he threw for 250 yards and a touchdown with an 88.9 passer rating. This is considered a down game for CJ Stroud, and he still threw for 250 yards and a touchdown. So the clutch moment of being able to get to that game-winning drive, to see Dalton Schultz actually start producing for the Texans, I think is positive. I think it's also positive that we held Bijan Robinson to only 46 yards and 3.3 yards per carry. I think that most of us believe that we couldn't stop the run, and we did. What we didn't do is stop the pass. And then one of the things that I've been getting a lot of flack on social media was saying that Pierce may be the problem for the run game. He had 20 carries, 66 yards, 3.3 yards per carry. He was very inefficient. And that's why I want to start the conversation. B. Scott, you wrote the article in the Cron, and I want to know what you think about this. What do you think is going on with Pierce?
Yeah, so I've said that I don't think that he is necessarily the problem. I think he's a part of a larger problem. And I think the best way to say it, I said this on Sports Radio 610 as well. I think I was on with Ron and for Clint the other day. And I was saying, look, he's not the biggest problem. He's not the problem. What he is the one that stands out the most. And the one that stands out the most to me because he looks a little bit like a different player. You know, if that makes sense. Like the Dameon Pierce that I had been introduced to last year, and even the one that we had researched and known from Florida, like his college tape, was just this violent, downhill, inviting contact, either breaking tackles or dragging a guy with him for an extra couple of yards or more, however long it was, pushing the pile, you know, that type of back. Now, you have to consider that the scheme is different. They're asking him to run a different way. They are blocking in a different way. It's not the same as what we saw. So, like, the way that they're attacking it and the way what they're asking him to do is different. But even still with that, man, it's hard to ignore how the numbers are down even up to this point. Like 5 weeks into the season, he was one of the best yards after contact guys in the league, if not the best, 5 games into last season. Now he's just kind of a guy, like just a yard or so, yard and a half or so. It's like it's some of those brute numbers, those physical numbers. If you look in the advanced stats, they're basically half or a shell of what they were at this point last year. So that part of it does stand out, and it does like it passes the eye test when you look. You're like, man, he just doesn't seem to be running the same way. There's been conversation about whether is the scheme fit or the fact that he lost some weight and wanted to he's also talked about wanting to be a more patient back and wanting to see it a little bit more. And I've said this, man, I think I like the way he did it before. You know, I like Dameon Pierce just the way he was, man. Like, and I remember this too, man. Like last year, the conversation, even in the offseason, talk about what they were going to do in the running back room because we knew it couldn't just be, you know, Rex. It wasn't going to be Rex Burkhead again. And it was like, man, we got to make Dameon Pierce more of a dynamic pass catching, got to do more with him, got to do more, do this, do that. And I'm like, nah, man, I like exactly what y'all doing with Dameon Pierce. Like, I get that y'all going to run a new scheme, but I want him to have the same mentality and the same kind of way about him. And I think that between the scheme and sort of just the wanting to take that next step as a back and some of the changes that he's made has made him look like a different back. Now, that's all aside from the fact that they got a makeshift offensive line out there and they're trying to run a new scheme on top of that. So the fact of the matter is, like, Dameon Pierce might not look the same, but also on top of it, like you asked what the problem is, he the problem? The other problem is, or the biggest problem is the fact that they're not good at zone blocking. It is a zone blocking scheme and they're not good at it. And maybe that's because of the injuries. You could say it's because of the injuries, but it's just the fact of the matter. Whoever's out there, it hasn't really been that good. So one thing that was interesting to me talking to D'Amico Ryans on Wednesday, was it Wednesday? Yeah. Talking to D'Amico Ryans on Wednesday was him sort of, you know, they don't give you a lot, but he did sort of seem to indicate or seem like he was open to changing some of the run schemes and some of what they do, like looking at it saying, hey, it's up to us as coaches to try to get the most out of the guys that we got, and especially our best players, which I still think, like, I'm not going that far with it. To be honest with you, I'm not going that far with it of, hey, I need to see more of Mike Boone and give Devin Singletary the touches. No, I'm still in on Dameon Pierce. I just want him to run like he used to. If that means changing the scheme so he sees it differently and feels a lot better about it, or maybe even changing the scheme is something that the offensive line personnel that they got in front of them right now, something that they can do better. Maybe they're better at that than what they wanted to bring in here. And you got to do that.
So before I get to you, Coach, I just want to say a couple things because, B. Scott, you definitely brought up a couple different things about the line and so forth. The first thing about yards after contact, he's rated now 14th in the league. And last year he was in the top 10. He was actually top 5 depending on the week. But now you're right. Like, he's not the back that he was last year, being ranked only 14th. In terms of line performance, the Falcons game, I will agree that the line performance was definitely an issue. There were plenty of times where he just had no place to go. Not all the time, but yes, that wasn't a great game for the line. It was a new set of linemen out there. You had Laramie Tunsil up there, and Titus not in his natural position. They are typically our bookends, and they're typically not great run blockers. But the thing is, if you look at the Jags game and the Steelers game, the blocking was pretty good. And I brought up this point, which actually Seth Payne and Sean Pendergast actually brought up a couple tweets of mine when they talked about it on their show. Which I actually talked to Jay, who is a commenter here and actually has his own podcast on YouTube called the Moderate Texan Podcast. And basically, there were a lot of different times where Dameon Pierce really just went into contact for absolutely no reason. So there was a screenplay where he actually found the hole. He went straight. It was probably 15 yards or so. And instead of going completely straight and continuing, because it would have been a touchdown, he literally cut to the left and went and hit contact for literally no reason. And you see that happening even in the Falcons game. You see that happening over and over again. It's like, why don't you just juke, avoid contact, and potentially get a tutty instead of saying, "Oh, there's a guy there, let me hit him." Sean Pendergast made the comment that that basically when he hits guys, he thinks he gets extra points because there's no other way to explain it.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I don't think that his mentality has actually changed or that he's like a less physical runner. But what's happened, or like his approach or attitude in that way has changed. But what's happened is he's trying to do something different. They're asking him to do something different, or he's trying to do something different. And like, it's just, I don't know if that's messing with his vision, but for whatever reason, it doesn't feel like his vision is the same. Like last year, on top of the brute strength and the willingness to invite contact, I also felt like he had decent vision. And now, like this year, I think if there was anything that you were maybe questioning the most about him right now, other than all of those other things that we actually kind of just broke down here, you would say, hey, one thing you could point to is like, man, is the vision is off. And why is the vision off? Is the vision off because of the scheme? Is he in his head? Is he thinking too much? Like, what is that about? And I'm not exactly sure.
Crenshaw, what's your take?
All right, B. Scott, in your article you wrote last year, he was averaging 3.1 yards after contact, and this year 1.1 after contact. So do we need to go back to last year when he get the ball, defenders in his face? Because that's what he excelled at last year, because something's got to give. Now, we know these guys not good run blockers. They're not good in the zone scheme. So it's not going to change throughout the year. So my question to you, B. Scott, what are we going to do?
Yeah, I think you might have to do less zone blocking until at least you feel whole and feel better about the guys that are out there doing it. Like maybe you feel better about zone blocking once Titus Howard's back at his natural position and whoever it is that's manning left guard, because we know that the plan was always supposed to be King and Green, and that's this. So that was always going to be like kind of a hairy situation. But let's just say like this. Say eventually when they get whole, they've got Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard as their bookend tackles, as we know. They've signed Shaq, they've paid Shaq Mason to be their right guard, as we know. So he's right there. And then once everybody's healthy, again, Juice Scruggs comes back, you figure out who's better, who feels more comfortable at guard, or who you like better at center, and figure out the Juice Scruggs, Jared Patterson situation at guard and center, and you ride and you go with that, right? Let's say they get a couple of games under their belt, however it configures with Juice Scruggs and Jared Patterson at left guard and center, okay? Then maybe after some time, maybe you kind of develop into a zone blocking scheme. But for now, maybe sometimes here and there, you just go back to some of the stuff that you were doing before, that they were doing before. Maybe like if you just evaluate it and say, hey, man, this hodgepodge of offensive linemen, musical chairs at offensive linemen, we never know who's healthy. And by the way, you check it out. Look, they get Josh Jones back from the injury report, but who shows up limited? George Fant's got a shoulder and a hip, or what was it? I have to go back and look, but he's got like two things. And so I'm like, okay. And Shaq Mason's got an ankle, limited with an ankle. So I'm like, okay, if my right side's not healthy, first of all, do I just go ahead and put Titus back over there since Josh Jones is back healthy and put him at left guard and put Titus back at his position? Do I first of all think about doing that? But long story short, if the offensive line is not whole, maybe I don't try to do this elegant zone blocking scheme and just start like getting off the ball and just hitting people in the mouth. You know, maybe that's what we start doing and create those kind of holes. And Dameon Pierce seemed to see those pretty well last year. And then when he did see contact, he was inviting of it and would take it with him. You know, that's what we remember, and that's what I'm trying to see.
Okay, so we go away from zone blocking, would that affect CJ, or you think CJ is good in any scheme?
That's an interesting question. I think CJ is good in any scheme, but I do think that it would affect, like it would have a residual effect on the offense, CJ right. included. Like I think I'd be silly to say no. So the short answer is yes. To what degree, I'm not sure. You know, like I think CJ is super talented and we've seen that. And I got a hard time right now based off of the way that he's played, like putting limitations on exactly what he could do. Like I think he could do a lot of things. But I don't know, man. The beauty of it too is that, you know, the play, every play is supposed to look the same. No matter what you're doing. Like if you're, you know, the run plays are supposed to look like the pass plays and all of that, like within this scheme. And I don't know. I don't know to what degree, but it would be hard to not think it would have some type of residual effect. And it makes you wonder, okay, man, do we change what we do, or do we just got to be better at it? Like, listen to D'Amico Ryans, the way he talked this week about like, hey, when we get our 2 or 3 chances, and to VT, to your point, like, hey, don't miss that opportunity. Don't just run away from green grass, so to speak, and into a guy when it's right there, or see that cut, or see that you don't need to make that cut. You know, like there's a clear issue right now, or conversation right now, about vision and what they're seeing, on top of the fact that they're not creating a whole lot to begin with.
So I am of the mindset that we don't go back and, you know, do too much power. I think that we should throw Singletary a bit more in their split carries. Singletary has been the more efficient back. Obviously, that's a small sample size. They haven't given him any carries last game at all, which I find interesting. But he's been the more efficient back. So I personally would throw Singletary in their split carries with Dameon Pierce and see if Dameon Pierce can catch up to this new scheme. You know, he is obviously a power back and zone, and I don't think we should switch what we're doing because CJ is doing so well in it that, you know, his development is more important than basically anyone else on this team, right? So if we have to develop him at the expense of Dameon Pierce, so be it. He's the future of this team for the next 20 years. So my thinking is do what it takes to keep CJ being CJ. And if that means switching up with Singletary, throwing up, another back in there, I think that is a solution. I think that Dameon Pierce will get better over time, right? Obviously, I do think he'll get better, but do I think he's a long-term running back one for this organization? I don't think so. I think that we need to get a bigger back, whether that's going to be a Jonathan Taylor type of situation. I think that Dameon Pierce is our Hunt, and we need to go find our Chubb. And I think that for now, for this year, for this situation and this season, we split carries with Singletary to get the job done, because in all reality, we don't need an elite back in order to win games. CJ's doing that. We just need an average run game. We just need someone that can get to close to 4 yards per carry. If you're getting 4 yards per carry and you're not making stupid mistakes, that's all we need. We can get an elite back later on, but we're putting the games on CJ's back and he's not shying away from it. So
Well, that's why I also would say that, like, I think Dameon Pierce is good enough to be that. Like the really good, like I would agree with the premise of he's not like this. He's not one of those top tier backs, but I do think he could be the best back or the top back on a winning team, provided that you have everything that's going well for you, up front and all of that. So I'm actually fine with Dameon Pierce still being the lead back, but where I would agree with you is that they need to split it up a little bit more, because Devin Singletary does offer you some things. And honestly, man, like, to your question of like, or the point of if we got to develop CJ Stroud at Dameon Pierce's expense, 100%. But the other way that I would look at it is, hey, man, if they're not running the ball, that's hurting CJ Stroud's development as well. Like an effective running game helps CJ Stroud. So how good will he ever be if he doesn't actually have a competent running game, not an elite running game, but one that is passable, which this one has not been. So if you can figure out something to do with Dameon Pierce, and I'm actually with the idea of like, hey, you don't necessarily have to change what you do. You just got to do what you do better, man. Like they're not good at it. They got to get whole along the offensive line. But there are some plays to be made, and you just have to flat out. Sometimes you just got to flat out be better. You can't change everything. You just got to do what you do and be better at it.
Well, we can't blame this all on Dameon Pierce. So let's get to. We do want to get to the Saints preview, but there are a few more things that we want to talk about the Saints game, and that's his fourth quarter soft zone coverage issue, because we basically made Desmond Ridder look like freaking Aaron Rodgers. We did not put any pressure on him. He was able to dink and dunk us over 300 yards. The dude never showed up like this in any game he's ever thrown. In the Jags game, he threw back-to-back interceptions. We didn't intercept him. We didn't sack him. We did absolutely nothing to stop this kid. He even ran in for a touchdown, which you can actually say that should have been a touchdown. That should have been a touchback because he fumbled it. That's a ref issue. But nonetheless, D'Amico Ryans ran a lot of soft zone coverage, which in my opinion is what cost us the game. Because at the end of the day, we were able to put points on the board. There were about 2 minutes left, and we made Desmond Ridder look like Patrick Mahomes in 13 seconds and put points on us when we should have been putting the pressure on. B. Scott, what do you think about that?
I think it shows you the way that they felt about the corners that they were working with in that game. Like I said this on the air earlier today, like we were making fun over here at 610 of like, hey, what's like Derek Stingley's out. We're not even missing him because Shaq Griffin is that good enough of a fill-in. But then Shaq Griffin goes down, and all of a sudden, now you do miss Derek Stingley and Shaq Griffin because your depth is depleted. And so, you can gripe about that. I don't think that this is an unreasonable or irrational thought of like, hey, why were you in such soft zone coverage? But also to me, it tells me what they thought about what they were working with, because I feel like D'Amico Ryans is the type that values a really good man cover corner. And if he thought that he had guys out there that could do that, he would do that. So to me, it was just indicative of where they were and how the depth suddenly had been so depleted in that specific position. And then you look up and they've signed my man Verrett. My man Verrett from the 49ers. Jason Verrett from the 49ers to the practice squad. And D'Amico Ryans is at the press conference just gushing about how, man, I know he's never healthy, but when he is, he's one of the best that I've been around, So they went out and got another corner because of how they feel about their depth right now. So, I agree that it was frustrating to see, like, that last drive, even before. Like, I know Desmond Ridder was even cooking before that, but I wasn't really upset about it, man, until that last drive. And I'm like, oh, man, y'all just let him go down there like he's doggone Tom Brady or somebody, Peyton Manning or somebody. Like, what is this? I was cool. I was actually, like, okay with the game he had up until then, because honestly, I didn't have any complaints about the defense up until that drive. Like even given all of that you just talked about, you look at it, man. The defense that kept them in this game. The first half, like they give up that touchdown in the first half, but 6 possessions for Atlanta, and they are punting on every one of them except that one that they gave up the touchdown. Now you look at it on your end, you got 6 possessions and you split field goal, punt. So you don't get a touchdown at all. CJ Stroud looked good at the end of the first half, engineering that field goal drive. But other than that, you weren't really doing a lot for your defense that I thought was keeping you in the game, and a big reason why you went into halftime with a lead. Then you get to the second half, and they get 2 fumbles. They get 2 turnovers in the second half that you do nothing with on offense. Like you get a field goal out of it, and not just that, but you turn around and you don't even have no sustained drives. Like you just have just drive killing, just nothings. You don't give us nothing. And this is coming off of, like, you get lucky that the first fumble happens and you're already in field goal territory, but you do nothing with that drive, so you only get a field goal because of where you got the turnover at. Okay, and then after that, you basically do nothing with the next turnover, and I want to say after that it's punt. Like the defense is getting off the field, and you're still not doing nothing. You have back-to-back 3 and outs as an offense, so. Like I like CJ specifically at the end of the first half, and then that drive you were talking about earlier, VT, the one where it would have been the game-winning touchdown drive until Atlanta goes down in there and kicks the field goal. Those were his best moments, but everything in between that or around that was just choppy, man, and it had a lot to do with the fact that they couldn't really run the ball that great, but also, man, like we had drop passes. It was rough. It was a rough day offensively, I thought.
Well, Quentin, what do you think about both defensively and offensively, particularly the fourth zone soft coverage and all the defensive mistakes? Even my guy, Jalen Petrie, he gave up 95 yards. What do you think about the defense, particularly in the fourth quarter?
Well, on that game-winning drive for Atlanta, we was playing them like they needed a touchdown, not a field goal. And I don't know why coaches do that on 2-minute drills. They play that soft coverage like that. But I think that the defense was just gas. Time of possession, Atlanta had us, I think, almost like 9 or 10 minutes more. And because sustained no drives. I mean, we wasn't good, but we were still there at the end. So that shows a lot for this team, because the old Texans would have got blown out in Atlanta. So this team still kept it close with all the injuries we had and all the drop passes. I really wish when CJ threw that game-winning touchdown, it would have been a game-winning touchdown, because imagine how the radio would have been. B. Scott, man, the radio would have been so fucking amazing this week.
Yes.
But man, I mean, that was a moment. It reminds me of the other guy we used to have here moment when he threw it to Kenny Stills in New Orleans. We thought, oh man, that's it. But then we lost that game as well. Yeah. Well, overall, I say it was an encouraging loss, and it's a teachable moment. Now we got the Saints this weekend, so it's a little tougher, but we'll get through it.
All right. So speaking of the Saints, let's talk about
the Saints. 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me. That's a deal, right? Ride with me if you're.
We have some things to talk about just in terms of injuries and so forth. So we've got Tank Dell, Malik Collins, Shaq Griffin, Laramie Tunsil, Robert Woods, all that did not practice today. We've got a new corner, as you brought up, B. Scott, and Tank Dell being the biggest separator. That's going to be an issue, because we saw what happened with CJ Stroud the moment that Tank Dell actually went out. When you go back and watch the game, there was at least 6 different situations where CJ Stroud was extending plays and literally just waiting for someone to get open, and no one did. And so, those became empty possessions. If no one's getting open, there's nothing that he can do. There was a 3rd and 8 where he threw to Robert Woods, and clearly you could see he was frustrated because Robert Woods was in damn near triple coverage. It was almost an interception. And By pure luck, it wasn't. But you can tell CJ was frustrated because no one was getting open, and he's like, "I have it converted a third down." There was no third down conversions in the first half. So I mean, he was getting frustrated because no one's open. We don't have our biggest separator now. Noah Brown is going to take his place. Um, and from an offensive perspective, I'm not really feeling this game as much as I did in the Falcons game because with the Falcons game we had Tank Dell, we had Robert Woods and Nico Collins, and without Tank Dell, I'm feeling kind of rough. What do you think about it from an offensive perspective? Knowing the amount of dudes that are out.
Yeah, we on the same track here, man. We on the same track, like the same concern. The only thing I would say differently is I'm kind of just hoping that he plays. Like if you heard CJ talking, he was like, man, Tank might play. And that's me kind of thinking, I know it's a rookie talking and maybe he's talking out of turn there, but hoping that the rookie just thinks the guy is going to, like it maybe has some information there or something. Like all these concussions are not created equal. It's hard to necessarily know. I did not see him in the locker room when I was in there on Wednesday. So there is that. And obviously, of course, he didn't play. I wouldn't have been able to talk to him if he's in the protocol, of course. But yeah, no, Tank Dell is one of the, I would say, I'm not breaking news here, but they got a handful of playmakers on the team. Dameon Pierce, I would still consider to be one of them with his, despite the issues that we've talked about already. But it's like Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Dameon Pierce. And then outside of that, like I think John Mechie's got potential there, but it's just not there yet. It's going to take some time. But those are the three right now where I look at these guys could, have a game-changing, like just really have a game-changing play. Obviously, Robert Woods is considered more steady, reliable, and there were some times where he wasn't Mr. Steady, reliable in this Atlanta game. But you still consider him to be that. Now he's got a little bit of a rib issue. But, yeah, I'm concerned about it. Like, Robert, who knows if you're going to have, like, you could be substituting Tank Dell and Robert Woods, who knows, right, for Noah Brown. And we're in there in the press conference asking if Xavier Hutchinson is going to get more run, more burn, which I would actually be intrigued by. But yeah, no, you don't feel as great about that as, having Tank Dell out there, having your full arsenal. Like, yeah, man, it is concerning. I mentioned before, I'm just looking here at the names that you got here. Shaq Griffin, I talked about that, like not having that depth at corner anymore, like when you felt like you had it before, like Steven Nelson. How about Steven Nelson being your most reliable corner? Like he was supposed to be the older guy. I thought Shaq Griffin was supposed to be insurance for Steven Nelson. Right. Now Steven Nelson is Steady Eddie, and Shaq Griffin is your depth for Derek Stingley, who's injured a lot. We talked about Anthony Richardson to start the show. I mean, they seem to be about the same breed in that area right now of not being able to stay on the field, right? So having Shaq Griffin, that's to me is a big deal. Kind of going back to your earlier point, your earlier gripe there about all that soft zone coverage. Well, you gotta feel good about your coverage guy, your man guys though, right? You don't just throw a dude out there you don't think he can do it and just say, hey, just go do it. No, you're gonna try to work around the weaknesses. So that to me again is like, okay, let's see how that progresses. If that progresses throughout the week, you hope it does. But on both ends there, you feel like your weapons are lesser and your and on the back end of your defense that you're not whole. So, and again, that's on top of all of those offensive line concerns that we talked about. Like that's always lingering in the background, and it's a whole nother issue of what the musical chairs might look like. They're like, I come away from the practice thinking, hey, we're going to see the same offensive line, even though Larry Tunsil didn't practice. We're going to see the same offensive line that we saw in Atlanta here in Houston against the Saints. But then George Fant pops up on the injury report, and I'm like, all right, if he's limited and Titus Howard is back, Josh Jones is back, like, we might want to. This offensive line might look way different, or might should look way different, even if it doesn't. So it's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of the injury report has never been more interesting to me since I've been covering the team. Has never been more interesting to me. Every week I'm like, who's on it? Who's off of it? I just come from practice. I seen some of it. I already know a little bit, but what they got to say about it, So,
well, before I let Crenshaw, before I let you go, I just want to read off some of the things that are going to be our challenges. I think this is going to be a most challenging game that we have had to fight since this whole season. So the Saints are 3-2. They're holding opponents under 19 points per game. As everyone knows, if you hold opponents under 20 points, you're likely going to win. And that is what they're doing. They're holding quarterbacks to 5.6 per attempts, a mid-60s passer rating. This is one of the best defense. They have a top 8 rush defense in yards allowed. They're holding running backs to 3.5 yards per carry, 4th best in the league. They are the top 4 passing defense in yards allowed. And just overall, they're holding wide receivers to 64.9 rating, the 3rd best in the league. Who are we going against from a matchup perspective? Nickelback Alante Taylor, he's holding quarterbacks to sub 90s. You got quarterback Paulson Adaba, he's holding quarterbacks to sub 50s. And then, of course, you got cornerback Marshall Lattimore holding quarterbacks to low 60s. Crenshaw, I could keep going, but let me know what you're thinking about this Saints defense. Will the Texans offense be able to overcome these challenges?
It's going to look like game 1 against Baltimore. Offense is going to struggle. I think this is the game that they're going to get to CJ. So that sack streak is going to end. The interception, he's finally going to throw one this Sunday. We've shown that we can't run the ball. We're going to be so one-dimensional. I think this is going to be a bad game, and we're going to go into the bye week with a lot of questions. It's going to be people going to lose their mind after the game. They're going to lose their mind on Monday. So this is the game here that we're going to be like, okay, are we back or we still got work to do?
Hey,
yeah,
I was going to say, let me just co-sign Crenshaw on that. That was well said, bro. That was well said. Can I co-sign you?
Oh, all day, man. Wild trip. You can co-sign me.
All right, bet. I'm going to co-sign Crenshaw on that, man. I think that was well said, bro. I got no notes. I liked it.
So if we do have a shot at winning, I'll give my keys to victory here. And one of them is that we need to actually sack the quarterback. Here's one of the issues that we have. We are blitzing under 20%. We're ranked 28th. We're simply just not blitzing enough. Hold
on, VT. I got to interrupt. I'm sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Breaking news: the Astros are heading to the ALCS. This is the 7th straight. So shout out to the Astros.
Oh, my TV is behind. Hold on, let me see. It's 2 outs. My TV. Oh, they got the call too. That is good breaking news. They got the call on the outside corner.
Okay. Bring on the Rangers. All right, VT, go ahead.
Already.
Yeah, so I was just saying here that we're blitzing under 20%, ranked to the 28th. I mean, we definitely need to blitz more. Like we were talking about before, the soft zone coverage in the fourth quarter is what cost us the game, in my opinion. And the thing is that we only have 7 sacks in the year. That's bottom 5 in terms of sacks on the quarterback. Now, here's the thing, though. We have a chance to actually change it around because the Saints have given up 17 sacks. That's the 4th most in the league. So the thing is, we have a chance here to sack the quarterback enough where we can make a difference in the game. So that means that Jonathan Gennard, Jerry Hughes, and Will Anderson have to step up. So, my key to victory here is that they actually sack the quarterback. The second thing is our secondary has to perform better. My man, Jalen Petrie, my favorite player, gave up 95 yards last week. That's unacceptable. Overall, the secondary just wasn't it. Now, I can't blame them completely because our front 7 just didn't perform. So without a pass rush, your secondary can't perform. But they were missing tackles. We are leading the league in missed tackles as of now, and that is something that has to change. So on the defensive side, there are a lot of things that we can do. We're playing a better quarterback. We made Desmond Ridder look like Tom Brady. Let's not make Derek Carr look like Peyton Manning. So there are things that we can do on defense. Crenshaw, what are your keys to victory, and what do you think about the Saints defense as I'm talking about? I'm like, if there's a chance to win, what do we do?
The only chance to win is to pressure Derek Carr. You pressure him, he get the happy feet, he start making the mistakes. That to me is the only chance to win this game. Defense going to have to get turnovers. We're going to have to score on defense, and we might got to get another one of those run backs again. We can use one of those, man. Get us a run back because special teams hasn't really been good this year. But that was my keys right there. But I still have us losing this game. Sorry, Texans fans, 21-13.
21-13. That's your score prediction. All right.
So look, guys, I hate to do this, man. I hate to come on the show and just patently disagree with you guys, but look,
Please do.
I feel this way, and I've got some of the same concerns and critiques about the defense. When we're talking about importance and keys to the game and what they need to do, I'm gonna say something different on this part. I think they got to flip the narrative. They got to completely flip the narrative, and because the narrative is, this offense is coming into its own and still figuring things out. It's got a promising quarterback, but it's got a shoddy offensive line and can't run the ball, so it's not that good of an offense yet. It's just got a good, promising quarterback, but it's going up against a juggernaut of a defense, and that's all facts. That's all true, but they got to come out here and do something in spite of that, because we saw what happened when your defense, even when it's not at its best, but when it gives you a chance to win, when you win the doggone turnover battle, man, that's what I was getting at earlier, dog. Like they gave up that one touchdown in the first half, and they got Atlanta punting the whole half. They gave up the one touchdown. It was bad, but they gave up the one touchdown. They got Atlanta punting the whole half. And the only reason why they still in the game, or the only reason why they win the game, is because Kaimi Fairbairn is reliable. He scored all the points in the first half. That's the first half. You get to the second half, and they get 2 turnovers and don't do nothing with it. Had a ball in your own territory. Like, you got to be opportunistic. You got to take advantage of anything that they give you, man. Anything that they give you. So I think they got to flip the narrative, flip the script a little bit on them, and do some things in spite of. Maybe this is the coaching game, the DeMeco Ryans and Bobby Slowick game, where they figure out a way to scheme around their deficiencies. Because I'm not trying to say that what y'all saying is not true about this mismatch here of what they up against in this Saints defense. But you're gonna have to figure it out, because your defense, even they give you a chance, you're gonna have to score some points, man. You got to put some points on the board. We saw that. You got to be able to sustain drives. You got to be able to capitalize on turnovers if you get them. So that to me is the key to the game. Do the stuff that you didn't do in Atlanta. If the game is right there in front of you, go take it, which they did not do. Go ahead and do that this time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think there's a shot at winning here. The thing is that it's going to be tough. And the thing is, we definitely have to execute better, and particularly on defense, because last week, we actually, even though we didn't convert a lot on third downs, we got the game-winning drive, right? The whole thing is that defense. Now, my issue here is that if Verrett does replace Kadar, because I don't think Kadar, he's not really great in man coverage. So if Verrett can replace him, then we got a shot at actually making Carr think. If we play soft zone, that's going to be tough, because then we're asking CJ Stroud to put up 30-plus points on the board. And that's something that's going to be very difficult with this secondary. I do agree 100% with Crenshaw that the biggest way that we can win is to get after the quarterback, get those strip sacks, get those takeaways, because to do that, now we can win the time of possession, because I don't think that we'll be able to win the time of possession with the run game of what we've seen the past 5 weeks, plus the Saints' rushing defense is phenomenal. So I don't think we'll be able to win the time of possession with the run game. I think you do that by having defense force takeaways and be able to actually maybe have a special teams touchdown or something like that. Like, as you say, Quentin, like, we need this to be all three phases. Defense and special teams has to help out the offense here. We're going to struggle if Robert Woods and Tank Dell aren't there. Those are 2 major pieces that people maybe are minimizing. I know that we're home and obviously I want to win, but if you're missing 2 of the biggest pieces on offense, that's a huge problem for CJ Stroud. Who is he throwing to? Dalton Schultz? And then who else? Nico Collins is going to get clamped up by these incredible cornerbacks. This is probably the best quarterback room that we played with. So that, to me, that's a struggle. My score prediction is that, yes, I do think that we'll lose. I don't think it's going to be high scoring, though. I think it's going to be a 17-10 game. I think it's going to be low scoring all around. And my score prediction is 17-10. B. Scott, any last words before we start closing this up?
Just I've said everything, man. Just my score prediction. I'm gonna go 24-14 Saints as well, man. I'd like to pick the Texans. I'd like to feel better about them, and I'm hoping to be wrong. Man, look, I've been wrong about a lot of stuff this week, and especially as it pertains to the Astros, I've been happy about it. So I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope that they do act. The one thing I 100% want to happen is for Will Anderson to get him a sack, man.
Yeah.
I want people to, because I feel, as somebody who was not a proponent of drafting Will Anderson or even trading to get Will Anderson, like I wasn't like, I'm not gonna say not a fan of the move, but that's just not something that I would have done. Ever since that he's got here, I've been thoroughly impressed by dude and feel like he is going to be a stud, a star. And he's got some things that he's got to learn, clean up, and like get better at. But dude, like y'all see him? Y'all see that dude? Like when you talk about get off the bus, or like if you don't know nothing about football and you're just looking at the people that stand out, that dude is one of them. You know, like if you don't know nothing about sacks and anything about anything, like you're like, who's that guy that's just stronger than the other guy that's across from him? So I'm just hoping to kind of kill the narrative of, hey, forget the advanced stats of the win rate. I want to see some sacks. I want to see this. I want to see that. Yeah, we want to see more of it. But I mean, we've seen a sack. We've seen a blocked field goal. We saw a play in the Steelers game that would have been a touchdown that got called back. So I'm hoping that what beast mode loading is on is what actually happens. The 28-13 Texans win, but I'm gonna call 24-14 in favor of the road team, the Saints.
All right. I think we're agreed there. Crenshaw, any last moments before we wrap this up?
I just hope the Saints don't take over the stadium. That's my last words. Those fans, those fans travel. So
don't hold your breath on that, brother. do not put no money on it or anything like that.
Yeah, man.
So I think we'll do a short prayer to say, listen, I hope that CJ Stroud has a great game. And regardless of anything, Will Anderson, CJ Stroud, hope you show up. Win or lose, you guys are the future. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you guys for watching. Hope the Texans wins. This is going to be the biggest challenge that we've had to date. So go Texans.
This is Crenshaw, Briggs, and VT. We want the touchdown. We not trying to go for 3. And it's best if you get up out the street, cause them bulls out the pen and they about to stampede.